The Hello Game by Orphanology. It was December and I had fallen back into bad habits. Even though I had been sober for almost 2 years, 20 months, 18 days if you're counting, which I was, I had no problems in readjusting to my old ways. It was like my body had been waiting for my mind to make this decision. It already knew what to do. It knew who to call, where to drive. All I had to do was say yes. So I did. The first few weeks weren't bad. The train was still on its tracks, all the stops made. It ran, essentially, on time. But the mistakes returned, slowly creeping into my life. I missed a shift or two at work. I overslept and didn't meet my girlfriend when I said I would. And then the money. I never had enough money. Sarah found out before anyone else, and she made me leave before I could lie and tell her she was wrong. Or lie and tell her I was going to get help. She knew. This was the 3rd time I had done this. What I remember about moving out of the apartment. The grey indifference in the sky. Seagulls doing loops over my head. The way my hands hurt in the cold. I had lost one of my gloves a few weeks ago, and standing in the parking lot, staring at my bright red hands, all I could think of was, where do all those lost gloves go? Does anyone notice them? Do they collect them? Do they photograph them? Do they make an Instagram account dedicated to the missing halves of one whole thing? I decided that was something I would do as soon as I got the time. That's when the phone calls started. Everybody gets those calls, a local area code, but not a number you know. When you pick it up, it's usually dead air, but not always. Sometimes there's someone on the other end. A voice hidden in the static.
Is this call Olsen?
The voice always seemed to be neither male nor female, old or young. It was just a distorted echo, like a memory of speech. I would say yes, but no one would say anything else, and then the line would disconnect. But that was only some of the time. Most of the time there wasn't anyone there. Just dead air. Just static. Did you know people used to try and read the future in TV static? There was some performance art/magic group from the 80s called the Temple of Psychic Youth. They talked about how television could be used in rituals, that there were unseen shapes in the formless images of scrambled snow on screens. My dad had a CD by them. I remember being scared by it. That's the thing about being a kid, looking at all the things adults have. It seems so scary, so unknown. I guess that feeling never goes away. At this point I had started selling, mostly to finance my buying, so that meant I was answering my phone. Any ring could be someone calling for a hookup, but to be honest, it usually wasn't. The vast majority of my clients texted, which meant 8 out of 10 calls were typically those unknown numbers. Sometimes I'd shout into the receiver or say something stupid. Occasionally I would read pages from whatever book was around. I liked the sound my voice made in that weird digital abyss, the way my vowels stretched out and vanished. I didn't understand the phone calls. Was it just a telemarketer's computer programmed to random dial? Did calling people like that work? Do people really buy things over the phone? In a strange way, I began to enjoy the calls. My life had become increasingly isolated and dark, revolving mostly around my escalating drug problem. The ringing of the phone at least promised contact, even if it didn't deliver. With my dealing, I was able to save up enough money to get an apartment, a shitty place on the east side. It was a pre-war building with thin walls and a broken front door. As far as I could tell, I was the only inhabitant of the place. The mailboxes in the lobby were always empty, and I never saw anyone. Not even the landlord. All my dealings with him had been via email, and they were all 1 or 2 word answers. I saw your ad for the apartment on East 13th, I typed. Can I rent the apartment? Is it still available? Yes. The security deposit is $200? Yes. When can I move in? Yes. That doesn't make any sense. When can I move in? I never got a response back from that email. But 2 weeks later, a letter tumbled out of my P.O. box. My name was written in black block letters. When I opened the envelope, I saw a key and a post-it note with my new apartment number written on it. The apartment was cold, even after I brought a space heater. It felt like there was a breeze from the inside that I just couldn't get rid of, no matter how hard I tried. I would call the number listed online for the landlord, but I never got through. All I ever got was a dead line. I listened to the static, but I never heard the future. The thing was, even though I never saw anyone else in the building, I could still hear something. At night, alone in bed, I would hear footsteps on the ceiling above me. Someone in that apartment, I'd think. Or maybe rats. Well, they would have to be pretty big rats to sound as loud as they did. In the morning, I would walk up the paint-chipped stairway with the urine-stained carpets and stand outside the apartment where I thought the noises were coming from. Nobody ever came out when I got close, and when I put my ear to the door, all I could hear were echoes. My customers drifted in and out like dead leaves as the broken winter sunlight flooded on the sidewalk. In the beginning, I never let anyone shoot up in my apartment, so they started getting high in the hallway, nodding out on the stairs. When I'd leave to go somewhere, I'd have to walk by the kids with pinned eyes and xylophone ribs. They looked as grey as the sky. I worried about someone dying, about what I'd have to do with the body. I had listened to Street Hassle by Lou Reed. I knew what happened to girls who die in shooting galleries. I loved the phrase shooting gallery. The words felt so dangerous and archaic. They made me think of being a kid reading Batman comics and learning about his rogues gallery. That's what his collection of villains was called. Those weird and grotesque figures determined to destroy him. I thought of rogues gallery when I saw kids wanting to score. Their faces destroyed by junk, their lives blown up, their eyes pinned and desperate. I was making supervillains who only wanted to destroy themselves. It was raining that Sunday, a cold, icy rain that slicked the streets and made them shine in a cold, dizzy way. There were 3 fatal accidents throughout the day. People just lost control of their cars and crashed. I read about it on my phone, and it made me wonder what being dead feels like. Not the death part. I know that would hurt. But the part after that. What comes next? Do we just stop? Someone knocked at my door. I went over and opened it. Eric was on the other side. I let him in. Eric was tall and played bass in some shoegaze band. He was a terrible bass player, but he was beautiful with jagged cheekbones and pink and blonde hair that fell in his face. Somehow that evened out. There was a girl with him. There was always a girl with him, but never the same girl. This girl was thin, with blonde hair that fell to her shoulders. She had dark roots and wandered about my apartment as I dabbed up Eric. He told me her name was Katie. She didn't say anything. I gave Eric his bags and he gave me my money, which was about the same time Katie started speaking. "Who painted that?" Her voice was quiet, a little burned out. "Painted what?" When she pointed out the window, I knew what she was talking about. A few weeks ago, graffiti had appeared on the building that faced my apartment on the west side. I think the building used to be a factory, but it, like most of the places in the neighborhood, seemed abandoned. Across its surface, a pale, naked, semi-faceless figure of indeterminate gender had been spray-painted. The body stretched across almost 4 stories and was luminous white, except for the chest. There The skin was ripped and painted a vivid bright red. So red, it almost made me dizzy to see. It was the red of chemical sunset, and the red of eyes at the end of the night. From the shimmering colors, a dark line rose up, wrapping itself around the window's edges. "I don't know," I told her. "It just showed up one morning." "Someone did that overnight?" "I guess." She stared at the window, pushed her hair away from her face. "No, you can't do that overnight. That would take forever." "Hey," Eric asked. "Do you mind if I—" "No, go ahead. Maybe I'll do some with you." Katie joined us after, though she looked strange. "That painting reminds me of something, but I can't remember what." My phone rang. "I don't know. I don't recognize it. Let me take this call." I answered on the fourth ring, right before it went to voicemail.
Cole Olsen.
"Yes?" And the call disconnected. I hung up the phone and stood up. "Who was that?" Eric mumbled. I shrugged. "Nobody. Somebody just asked my name, and after I said something, they hung up." "Did you say yes?" Katie asked. "Yeah, I mean, I think I did." I kind of laughed, but she looked serious. "You shouldn't do that. People call you and record you saying yes." "What can they do with that?" I walked over to the kitchen and started filling up the teapot with water. "They can call your bank and play you back saying yes. They can pretend to be you." "First of all," I put the kettle on the stove. The flames rushed up blue and bright. "I barely have a bank account. Secondly, if someone wants to be me, that's fine. My life is complicated and messed up. Maybe they can do a better job. Do you guys want some tea?" "Nah, we gotta go." Eric stood up and stretched. "Thanks a lot, man." "Nice meeting you," Katie said. She pulled up the hood of her jacket, and then they left. I was kind of surprised I let Eric use in my place. That wasn't like me. That evening, I fell asleep after midnight. The streetlights outside made the streets glow a strange, beautiful silver, and it was hard to sleep. The last thing I remember was noises from the apartment above me. They sounded like horses running through. Strange white horses. I dreamed about a field, and in the field ran white horses. Above them circled blackbirds. The horses were scared of the birds. They were trying to run away, but the birds were too fast. The birds swooped down and bit the horses, tore at their silky manes. The horses screamed, and their screams sounded like the cries of a human. The birds dug their talons into their skin and again, until their skin fell off in a great steaming sheet. The horses wailed, but when their flesh was gone, they went silent. They were just skeletons now, bone sculptures of horses standing in neon green grass, wet with their blood. The birds flew away into the sky, and the skeleton horses began to run as fast as they could, silent save the sound of their bones clacking. Their fleshless eyes stared out into the distance at something that was becoming clear. I woke up panicked and short of breath, thinking of those dead things running when I saw something in the shadows of my bedroom move. There was someone watching me in my room. I saw the figure move quietly towards the bedroom door. I wanted to scream, wanted to turn on the light, wanted to throw something, but I couldn't. I couldn't move. I couldn't talk. All I could do was watch. The figure stepped out of my room and closed the door behind it. I heard the front door open and then, gently, close. I sat in bed, heart pounding but otherwise silent, until I somehow fell asleep. When I woke up in the morning, I ran to the door. I opened it, and there was no one in the hallway. There was no one anywhere.
So how long have you been having this problem?
The tech guy looked at my phone. His name tag said his name was Odin. Was that possible? Or had he just written it to fuck with people? Today, I said. It started today.
And everything works fine but Touch ID.
Yeah, exactly. I put my finger on it and it doesn't open.
Your passcode works?
Yes. The Apple Store was crowded. Teenagers taking photos of themselves on iPads. Mums with kids trying to get their computers fixed. Everything was loud and modern and expensive. Said Odin. He frowned at the screen and tapped it.
Can I see your finger?
I held out my index finger and pressed it into the home button. Nothing happened.
Nothing happened,
Odin said. I looked around and saw my reflection on the screen. Even in my puffy winter coat and ski hat, I looked thin.
Look, we have some options.
He scratched his thin beard.
We either take your phone and fix it, or since the passcode works, you can keep it and just not have the Touch ID function.
What should I do? Odin stared at me. Did one of his eyes not move like the other?
I can't tell you what to do,
he said.
But if you give it to us, we can change it. That might be hard, but eventually it can work right. If you keep it, you're running a risk.
I stared at him. The store felt too hot all of a sudden. My chest felt tight. Can I have my phone back?
Of course, man.
Odin looked worried.
Your choice.
I grabbed the phone and almost ran out of the store, nearly knocking over a kid. He stepped right in front of me. I didn't understand how I hadn't run him down. I didn't stop moving until I got to the desolate parking lot. Above me, bone-white seagulls screeched at me from their perches on LED light poles. A few days later, I had heard Eric had died. Crashed his car after he left my place. His band was looking for a new bass player. They didn't say if Katie had died. Nobody I talked to knew who she was. I knocked at the upstairs apartment the next night. No customers had come that day. I tried to tell myself it was the snow, which had started in the morning and hadn't stopped once. But I knew it wasn't that. Junkies are like mailmen. Neither wind, nor rain, nor sleet, nor snow stopped them from their appointed rounds. Something else was happening. The clients had been decreasing over the past couple days. Always less than yesterday, which would be less than tomorrow. I didn't understand where they were going. I didn't understand what was happening. But I had heard noises in the apartment again, and I was going to find out. No one answered. I shouted hello and tried to open the door. It was locked. I went back to my apartment. My phone rang. Hello?
Can you hear me?
The voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it. Yes. It said something else, but I couldn't understand. The line went dead. I heard a noise outside from the street. I went to the window and looked out. The reflection of the streetlights in the snow outside lent the outside world an eerie glow. I could see a dark figure running away, too far to see a face. Their body was obscured by a heavy parka, and their hood was up. That's when I saw the painting on the wall was finished. The line from the bleeding chest extended up the length of the structure, and it was no longer a line. Instead, it was easy to identify what it had become. A dangling string attached to a floating black balloon that terminated at the top of the building. My phone rang. I didn't answer. The next day I drove to Sarah's place. I hadn't been back since I left. I parked in the visitor space and rehearsed my speech. I made a mistake. I said alone in the car, I want to come back. I'll do whatever you want me to. I went to the lobby and walked to the elevator, past the mirrors. I barely recognized myself. I looked like a stranger. When I got to her floor, I stopped. Was I really going to do this? How could I? Before I could stop myself, I went to the door and knocked. No one answered. I walked to the end of the hall and looked down at the parking lot. The snow was falling in great clumps. Sarah's car pulled in. She parked and got out of the car, shaking snow off her head. She was smiling. She looked happy. Happier than she looked when she was with me. There was a dark shape in the passenger seat. My stomach tightened. The door opened. There I was in the parking lot. I looked happy. Happier than I had seen myself in years. Sarah walked over and kissed me. I held my hand out and let the snow fall around me. Inside, I stared. Then I took out my phone and dialed my number. It rang twice, and then I saw the me in the parking lot take a phone out.
Hello?
Is this call Olsen? Out in the parking lot. Sarah stopped as I pulled the phone closer.
Yes.
I heard myself say. I hung up. The snow was starting to fall inside, filling the hallways with brilliant white flakes that looked like static. Above me, somewhere in the ceiling, I heard loud footsteps behind the snow.